I was actually watching the debate, whatever you want to call it, where Dave Smith and Douglas Murray are discussing things. A lot of it is war and this and that, and they do obviously talk about the Gaza massacre being committed by Israel. And this part here really stuck out for me because my feelings towards the Palestinian people changed in 2014 when I actually found out who and what these people were and what was happening to them. It made me go down a rabbit hole then. So let me go ahead and play this here really quickly, and then I'm going to say something.
So crucial. I am so startled by the post-October the 7th world, not just in Israel and Gaza and everywhere where I've spent most of the last 18 months, but in what's happening here in the United States of America. It blows my mind, much of the response here, and the desire to leap over the first victims of this and go on to all of the proximate causes, theoretical causes, what-ifs, and so on. I was, as I described in the opening of this book, I was in New York on the 7th of October, and I woke up and started seeing what was happening and discovered that later that day already there were plans to organize a protest in Times Square. And what was the protest in Times Square? Massive protest in support of Hamas as the massacre was still going on. And
okay, he is so startled by it. Let me explain something. Like I said, 2014, where Israel went into Gaza, massacred over 2,000 Palestinians, around 550 of them children. Okay? And that was in 2014. Okay? And then you can follow it up with the Palestinians in Gaza. They wanted to protest. So they were protesting and they were getting, I guess, a little too close to the wall that keeps them in their cage. And Israel killed more of them. They were pepper spraying them. They murdered like over 23 of these people during this time. I mean, they act as if this is somehow wasn't what it is. I mean, I'll be honest, okay? In 2006, I was dating a Jewish guy that was pretty much a Zionist at the time. I don't know anything about him now because I don't know, okay? But he told me that they had to do all this because these people were so savaged and he gave me the story of this Israeli boy who meeting this Lebanese girl online. And when they met up in person, she stabbed him to death. I come to find out that is the story they tell a lot of, especially Palestinian women. They always love to use Palestinian women stab these Israeli boys. And I'm not buying it. And I didn't buy it after that. Okay? I was so convinced that they had to do this. And I mean, I don't know a whole lot about it. I mean, a little bit political. I'm more, before recently, I was more of a party political person, okay? Like, I almost always supported everything the Democrats were supporting, okay? That is where my line was up until in recent years, okay? So I started to, who is a non-practicing, non-believing Catholic, okay? And can I really call myself Catholic? Well, if you can call yourself Jewish and you don't believe in anything, then I can call myself Catholic too, okay? Because it does take a road to get to where I ended up in the Catholic Church, okay? I was taking First Communion, so I had to go through the whole classes and all of that other shit to do it. So yeah, I'm gonna do it. And I don't actually buy into the whole agnostic people because there's issues. I have issues with their belief system too. So I don't ever consider myself that. I just consider myself as a non-believer. I don't believe in anything. I believe I'm here, I'm living, and when I die, that is going to be the end of me. Okay? That is truly what I believe, and that's it. I would love to believe in something more, okay? And I understand that everybody wants to believe in something more, okay? So that's where I am in my religious belief system, okay? So I could care less about someone's religious belief patterns, okay? But knowing what they were doing to them, and then I'm going to expose myself here a little bit. My husband, who frequently visits and watches and listens to David Duke, okay? Now, we are on opposite sides of our political spectrums of this, and yeah, I don't go along with whatever, but I hear him in my ear all the time, and I have to go research all this stuff, and he's always saying all this stuff. So I did actually, especially after the 2014 massacre of the Palestinians, I looked into this and started to become a lot more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause due to the fact that I view them more of like they are the Native Americans type scenario. While these Israelis and Israeli sympathizers would like you to view the Palestinians like the Japanese in World War II, or the Germans in World War II, or the Polish in World War II. But the truth of the matter is they're more like the Native Americans. And that's the truth and the reality of it. So to answer his question, that is why people were ready. And let's also not forget that the United States has taken in these refugees that Israel made. Israel made these refugees, and the United States has taken in some of these refugees from Palestine. And so they have their own belief system of what is going on in there in doing all this stuff, okay? And let's not forget the Palestinians are Christian and Muslim, and there are actually a section, and still today, these, what are they called? They're a certain type of Jewish people. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember. The Sumerian Jews, okay? That's what they are. And they live side by side with the Palestinian Muslims and the Palestinian Christians peacefully in the West Bank. This is something that these Israeli people and these Israeli, like, worshiping people, Zionist people, don't want you to know. And I did not know the Gaza Strip had a Christian population, let alone a Catholic population, up until recently either. So let's not forget that, okay? These are also Christians. And I am finding out more and more of what these Zionists have done and who they are and what they're about. And this is why people were ready to go to protest, okay? I made a comment on TikTok during the first weeks of this massacre by Israel. And all I said is to give the Palestinians freedom. And I got this comment that I thought was so weird. Obviously, they didn't know who I was, okay? They thought I was Palestinian. They said to me, "What happens to me if you're allowed to be free?" As if your existence depends upon denying somebody else freedom. And that appalled me. extremely appalled me. Now, that being said, I just wanted to tell David Murray, or whatever his name is that his name? I have to freaking look this up because I don't know this guy. Yeah, Douglas Murray, not David Murray, whatever. Douglas Murray, okay? Why people, and it's not like people are pro-Hamas, and I have actually even learned that the people in the Gaza Strip are not all pro-Hamas either, but that's their government, okay? I'm not a Trump supporter. In fact, I find him disgusting, but he is our government here. I can't help that. I mean, the Palestinians, though, they aren't given freedom so that they can have elections. They have been kept isolated. And Israel loves to keep them isolated because that keeps Hamas in power, okay? They're not allowed to leave without Israel's approval, okay? They're not allowed to return without Israel's approval. They're not allowed to import food and other resources, without Israel's approval. Like even things like linen or a wedding dress. Wedding dresses were banned. Cilantro. Chocolate, among a few things that, baby bottles. And now you can't even bring in baby formula. And I highly doubt that any of the Hamas fighters or any resistant group fighters are sucking down the formula, okay? I just find that bizarro. Okay, and they act like this, okay? They have to remove, like they're not allowed to have metal hospital beds. And these are hospital beds, and they have to come up and down, and there's a lot of electronics in them. And the truth of the matter is that these resistant fighters are not getting the material for their bombs. Their so-called rockets are basically glorified firecrackers, okay? By things being brought in. They're getting it by Israel. There is tons of undeployed bombs in Gaza because they just shoot them all off. And I think it's like 20% never detonate. So they risk their lives going out there to capture these bombs, to go out and get these bombs, and then they disassemble them and reassemble them into rockets, and then they shoot them over the wall, okay? And they don't have a target. They're just shooting over the wall. They're shooting over the wall because they are caged like animals, and they love it like that. The Israelis love it that they're caged like animals. And this is the part of it that people don't understand. And even in 2018, when the Palestinians tried to peacefully protest, Israel revolted, killing dozens of them. So to Douglas Murray, people are sympathetic to Palestinians because of the brutal occupation that Israel has installed on them. And now we know even more. And I have turned to somebody who once thought that Israel was good for everything because they were allowing, Christians and Muslims and Jews to all worship together. But that's not what was happening. I was delusional. I was in la la land believing that shit. Okay? But I'm no longer believing that. And I see the reality of it. I didn't know there's a whole group of Orthodox Jews who do not even believe Israel should exist. They think that it is against Judaism for Israel to exist. That's neither here nor there. It exists and whatever. I honestly believe the best path forward for everybody is to have a one-state solution. Probably should change the name of the country, include the whole region besides Syria and Lebanon, because those are different countries and you have to get back to the fucking borders, and have a one-state solution where Palestinians and Israelis live under one law, not the double standard law, where Palestinians are tried in military court while Israelis are tried in civilian court. Okay? Israelis are hardly ever convicted of murdering Palestinians. But as we've seen in the video that went viral not too long ago, where the Israeli dirty settler nearly killed an elderly woman who was harvesting her olives on her land. And this is the part that really pisses me off about these fucking people, is they refuse to allow these people to even live on their land because they want the land. I have seen videos, and I can even pull them up. I posted them on TikTok, and I don't know if I posted them here, of how Israelis talk about how all the land is theirs. And then that one crazy, psychotic Palestinian lady, I have no clue what her name is, whatever. She wears that headgear crap, and she goes on Piers Morgan, and she gets spotlighted for everything. She says she wants it all, including Iran, even including parts of Iran. But she wants Iraq, she wants Syria, she wants Lebanon, she wants Egypt, she wants Jordan, she wants it all. She's saying it all belongs to them. And this is the crap. They won't even define their borders. Okay? Why? Won't they even define their borders? They won't define their borders because they're expansionists. And this is the problem. And to be honest, okay, this is what happened to Germany between World War I and World War II, and why there was a huge war is because they were expansionists. They were expanding their borders, wanting more and more territory. And this is what happens. People will always resist, okay? When the British invaded what is now the United States, the natives resisted. Okay? You know, I even talk sometimes with my husband about that, and he's like, I said, yeah, they were scalping them. I knew that as a child. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I grew up in between Milwaukee and Chicago. Okay? And I'm not sure if I learned it in school, if I just learned it from being around where I was as a child, or if it's something my father said to us. You know, I did grow up only with my father, and I am grateful for that because he allowed me, unlike my mother baptizing me and thrusting me into this whole Catholic religion, my father allowed me to explore my religious beliefs. And I was allowed to pick my own religion and explore, and I did explore as a child, okay? By the time I was a teenager, I was a non-practicing Catholic, but I did believe in something, and I do still hold some Catholic beliefs. I do believe in marriage is forever. I'm never getting divorced. My husband will, I mean, we were together 12 years before we actually went ahead and went down to, I'm in Colorado, so we just went down to DMV, filled out some paperwork, and I have a marriage certificate, okay? I actually have a copy of my marriage certificate, a certified copy of my marriage certificate, due to the fact that I paid for it at the DMV that day, because the actual certificate has to go to the courts and they have to sign off on it. Okay. But I thought about changing my name. I never did, because it seems ridiculous now for me to change my name. Okay. But at the time, it seemed to be a lot of work. I started thinking of all the things I had to do to change my name. And I thought it was just too much work, and I just didn't want to do it. So he could have, and he knew it prior to that, because we were actually going to get married 5 years into our relationship. I mean, but financially it just never materialized. So we didn't do anything. And we just stayed together. And it became, you know, in 2018, it became financially beneficial for us to go ahead and just get married. But he knew that divorce, I mean, he's been divorced. This is my only marriage, and this will be my only marriage. That is something I do hold, okay, from my belief systems and growing up. And I believe it for other reasons. I mean, you are signing a contract, and the contract says, you know, till death. So that is what it will be. Anyways, besides that point, Douglas Murray, that is why. It is because of 2014 and then 2018. It is because we have seen, it's not that we haven't seen, we have seen, and we have learned of Israel's brutal occupation upon the Palestinian people, and that is really why this has happened.